so our first goal here is just raise a burr and get rid of any old bad edge. Get this kind of reprofiled. This thing is so dull that doing a Sharpie trick on it's really not going to tell us what the angle is, because this knife is it's just super dull. It wouldn't cut anything. Certainly won't cut paper. I was happy to see my U-line catalog. My new U-line catalog just came in today. Yeah, this is not. Yeah, it's not doing anything. Nothing. All right, so here we go. So I'm feeling a burr all the way across. So that was 3 strokes. That was 3 strokes. That's not uncommon. It's about usually good. And it will change over time too. So as your Cupitron belt dulls, if it's a brand new one, sometimes you'll get a burr with 1 pass. And if it gets really, really dull, sometimes I've had it where it's gone 5 or 6, 7, 8 passes. And that's when you kind of know, like, this belt's about done. It's time to replace it. Alright, let's do the other side. Yeah, and I can see... Alright, so up here, there was a little tiny reflection. There's a little tiny reflection up here of where the burr was. And it's gone, like with those 2 passes. So I did the 3 passes on the one side, and then when I turned it, you want to be looking at the very top edge, and lighting is important. So you want good lighting on what you're sharpening. You don't want to be sharpening in the dark, but you will see a little reflection up top here, and that's where I can usually tell, like, so the burr, it gets pushed back and forth on each side, and then we start refining it. But I always like to see that come off. So I still see a tiny bit down here at the tip. And it's actually really like rough. Sometimes it's a little more clear, little shiny line. And I'm not sure if the camera angle is catching it. Maybe it is. If it is, I'll try and point it out in the video. But it needs a little bit more on this side and a little bit of tip work. It's a little thin. So I'm just going to do like maybe 2 more passes on this side. And okay, can you guys see that shiny line up top from where we push that burr back over? Now watch, you'll see it go. See it disappearing? Gone. Gone. And now it should be on this side, and it is. But now it feels real sharp. So note that, understand, like that burr is going to flop back and forth to each side, but you want to see that it's doing that, and that's part of also knowing that you have reached your apex there. Now as we progress, and it's a little bit easier I think to see on some of the other grits, the little shiny burr that I'm talking about, and then eventually it gets almost impossible to see, and it just is just not there. It's just hard not to see. And that's when you start getting into more feel with honing. Alright, so now this is an 800 grit Trizac, and this is looking pretty good, so I'm expecting probably 2 passes on each side should be good. Yep, feel the burr. And right here, can you guys see it? Hopefully the video is capturing it. You'll see a little teeny tiny shiny part at the top. And my goal is to take that off. And it's gone. Gone on that first pass. I'm going to do 1 more pass. And now it should be on this side. But it's even less. Okay, because we've refined it even more. And this is feeling even more sharp. Okay? So that's done. And now we'll go to the 1200 grit. And this particular knife also, so let's talk about some other stuff while we're here. There is no I don't see any other issues. There's no swale. It has a nice shape, so we don't need to cut the bolster back. Everything is there. It's looking good. Now this is a 1200 grit. Now some people stop at 8. I like to go to 12. And it's the same thing. I'm usually like 2 very quick passes at 12. But I am looking for that to see if I see a little too much burr there. And I'm looking for that little shiny part. I'm seeing a little on this side. Once again, it needs a little tip work and a little bit back here in the heel. It's not uncommon to be a little fat in both of those areas. Sometimes you'll find you might need a tiny bit of touch up, and right here on the tip. I don't like this right here at the very tip. So I'm just actually focusing right here on getting the tip. And you'll see, like, I'm going to take my thumb, make sure I'm really well up against everything here, and that's it. I'm done. And I'm happy with that. Alright? So now I'm going to move on to my hone. This is very quick for me. And this is an all feel thing. No angle guides. None of that. I usually do 2 passes on each side. And this is a leather hone. I've tried, I've had people ask me, do you put anything on it? I've tried different things over the years. I've tried Tormek paste on it. I have tried gunny juice, and I have tried making my own diamond sprays. All of them are pretty effective. The one issue, and you can see, you guys see this? Pushing right through. Push. Not slicing. This knife is beautifully pushing through. Even down at the tip. And that's done. So that's the process. We'll see how that close-up came out, and hopefully it's pretty cool. And we'll go from there. So the only issue with using sprays and things on the high-speed hone I've found is just keeping them on there. They wear off pretty quickly. I wanted to finish this video out with a little talk about technique on 1x30s. Because I think it's important too. And you might develop your own style. Everybody kind of does. But I just wanted to show you a few things that I do. And I think they're important. Now, the other things I've talked about before too, converting your angle guide, very important to make it, it makes it very helpful to proper sharpening. But if you are going to go edge leading instead of edge trailing like I like to, technique's important here. So what I like to do when I'm going edge leading is I use my fingers as a guide. Now when you're doing a big knife, it's not as crucial as it is when you're doing smaller knives. So big knife, you'll see me a lot of times, I'll go like this. Sometimes I'll actually have my fingers all the way out and be going across like that. And that's kind of my technique there. Where technique becomes really important is when you're doing smaller knives or something thin like this. Because everybody's fear is this right here, slipping in, right? So if you slip in, you might catch your finger or feel like you're going to get hurt, or you're afraid the knife might get you. One thing that I have found is that's really helpful when you start doing the smaller knives is I like to put my fingers down low so that I can feel that they are in contact with the angle guide. Does that make sense? So I will put the knife up here, but I will go across and I will want to keep my fingers in contact with that angle guide. And sometimes what I'll do too is simply, instead of moving with it, because the one problem with that is, as you get down to this narrow point, you can see there's a part where it gets so tiny down here, the knife isn't really contacting anything at this point as we start to get to the point. So there's a few things you can do to help that. One thing I like to do is sometimes I'll just use a thumb with a smaller knife, and then you give it more of an angling and an arc. So as you start to get to the tip area where you're running out of knife, what you want to do is start using the back part of the knife where it's still fat by angling it down some to help give you the support. So I'll go like this, and you see I'm keeping the fat part of that knife on the angle guide. I hope that makes some sense there. So just like that. And that's what I'll do. Now, what I like about edge leading is it has a great feel to it. And I think if you do like I say, make sure you're close to your belt. Make sure that you make the adjustments on your angle guides. Cut the excess off. What I like about it is I do like the pushback. It's pushing the knife back into me, and it's very, very stable. What I never like about edge trailing, and I guess this is a personal preference thing. Edge trailing, when I touch the knife I feel it's always pulling it forward. So I don't really like that, that pulling forward, because sometimes I find that's a lot harder to control than when I'm just supporting the knife and the belt's pushing it into me. It's very easy for me to support this edge on there. And I'll just show you, real quick again on this knife right here. All right. So I'm going to come up here, and you see as I get to this thin part, I'm not going to go like this, like I might do with a longer knife. But even then I can, because as long as you're staying on that angle guide. But see, as I got down here, it did want to slip in. So that's why I like to, on little tiny knives, I'll just use one finger, and I'm not riding the knife across as like with a bigger knife where I have no fear of this coming off. There's plenty of room. I'll ride this knife all the way down with my hand. So a big knife, I ride the whole thing. With a small knife, I'll use a thumb, and I'm not going to ride that whole thing, because when I get to this thin part, you might slip in. So I just wanted to do that as an end here, to let you know that the technique there is important.